This is Melissa McGinnis with Long Beach Local News. We're at the Long Beach Police Department. We're about to listen live to a press conference where they're about to discuss a murder in 1975 of a Long Beach police officer that's been unsolved. There's a reward being offered today, and let's go have a listen.
Now I'd like to introduce Chief of Police Robert Luna.
Well, good afternoon to everybody, and I really can't say how much I appreciate all of you being here to cover this story, and I can't say how much I appreciate the family being here with us today. And we are here today in this appropriate setting, and as you see behind me, we're in front of our Police and Fire Memorial to announce up to a $75,000 reward and ask for the public's help with the murder investigation of a Long Beach police officer. In a span of 77 days, from September 1975 through January of 1976, 3 Long Beach police officers were shot and killed. The only case of the 3 that remains unsolved is that of Officer Frank Lewis. This case was reopened a few years ago to take a fresh look at the evidence and move this investigation forward. I want to express our appreciation to the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, who last week, at the recommendation of Supervisor Don Canabi, issued a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for the murder of Long Beach police officer Frank Lewis. In addition, I want to thank the Long Beach Police Officers Association and the Fraternal Order of Police for increasing the total reward to $50,000. I would also like to add that the Mayor Robert Garcia, is working with our City Council in an effort to add an additional $25,000, and if successful, that's what will bring the amount of this reward to $75,000. As we approach the 40th anniversary of the murder of Officer Frank Lewis, it's our hope that a witness or somebody who knows anything about this case may be more willing to come forward and say something. We'd like nothing more than to apprehend the person or persons responsible for Officer Lewis's death, and more importantly, to bring closure to the family you see here with us today. I'm not going to introduce Deputy Chief Dave Hendricks. He is the Bureau Chief of our Investigations Bureau.
As the Chief said, my name is David Hendricks. I'm the Deputy Chief of Investigations for the Police Department, and I'm going to take a moment to talk about the case. On December 13th, 1975, just before 3 a.m., 28-year-old Long Beach police officer Frank Lewis was murdered in the 6200 block of Cantel Street in East Long Beach. Officer Lewis had been with the police department for about 2 years. He was returning home after his patrol shift had ended when he tried to stop a crime in progress and was murdered in the process. About 30 minutes prior to Officer Lewis arriving home, Mr. Dennis Gachet was driving on the freeway but began to feel tired. Mr. Gachet pulled off of the freeway onto Cantel Street and went to sleep in his car. Mr. Gachet was awakened by a suspect or suspects violently beating him, possibly in an attempt to steal his car. Based on our investigation, we believe that Officer Lewis arrived home, parked his personal car, and seeing suspicious activity down the street, went to investigate. As Officer Lewis approached, the suspect or suspects who had violently beaten Mr. Gachet confronted Officer Lewis, shot him, and fled. Residents called the police after hearing the gunfire. Sadly, Officer Lewis was pronounced at the scene. Mr. Gachet was transported to a local hospital where he remained for several days due to the extent of his injuries. Officer Lewis's duty weapon, police badge, and police identification were taken from his person the night that he was killed. On March 12, 1976, Officer Lewis's police badge and police identification were recovered from a vacant residence at 915 South Acacia Avenue in the city of Compton. Officer Lewis's duty weapon remains outstanding. Long Beach homicide detectives have revisited this case multiple times over the years. Most recently, Detectives Todd Johnson and Shay Robertson have spent time looking at the case, locating witnesses, and conducting interviews across the country. Investigation revealed at least one and possibly two vehicles with several male and female African American occupants were in the area the night that Officer Lewis was killed. These occupants were not known to residents in the area. These vehicles are described as a mid-70s black top, blue body four-door Fleetwood Cadillac, and an early 60s white four-door Fleetwood Cadillac. We have several photos on display here today. They include photos of Officer Lewis, an aerial view of the neighborhood in 1975, his police badge and identification that were recovered in Compton, an aerial view and photo of the vacant Compton residence, a billboard announcing a reward at the time, and stock photos of the vehicles I described. Again, we're asking anyone who may have lived in the East Long Beach neighborhood or Compton area in 1975 and recalls seeing anything out of the ordinary to please contact the Long Beach Police Department. I'm also asking anyone who may have been involved or who otherwise has any information about the murder of Long Beach Police Officer Frank Lewis to please come forward and contact the Long Beach Police Department. I have a moment to take a few questions if there are any.
Chief, was this a situation where you had suspects but you never got a file?
This case, it's 40 years, and there have been multiple people of interest, but charges were not sought against any of those people.
So there was never a situation where you had a suspect, but either you didn't feel comfortable, the department didn't feel comfortable filing with the VA?
At one point, an arrest was made early on, and again, charges were not sought ultimately, and that person was released.
Is that still a person of interest?
No. I'm sorry?
Just to clarify, there was one shooter?
Suspect or suspects. Yes.
Are the vehicles new information, or is it that you gained from witness statements since opening the cold case, or is this old information?
This is new information as we went over the case again and we're conducting those interviews. This is new.
Is this the only new information you have on this case?
This is what we're releasing at this time.
So there is other information that you possibly have, but you might not be releasing right now.
This is the only new information that we're releasing right now.
So the new information is the vehicles only, or also the badge?
No, not the badge. The vehicles and the description of the occupants of the vehicles.
Can you tell us how the badge and police ID how they came into your possession?
Somebody found them and took them to a local police department, and we were notified.
I remember I'm going north on the San Diego freeway. I became drowsy. I see Palo Verde off-ramp. I was familiar with the area because I graduated from Long Beach State, so I knew exactly where I was going. I pulled off the freeway. The first street that I see is Cantel. So I just pulled in there. I turned the car around to face back towards Palo Verde and went to sleep in the car. And that's the last I remember. The next thing I know, I wake up, I'm covered with blood, I can't see. I kind of stagger out of the car. By this time, the neighbors are already out there, and I had asked somebody that was standing on the curb, a gentleman, if I remember correctly, could somebody call 911 or an ambulance or whatever? And the gentleman very curtly said, "One's on the way." And I thought to myself at the time, well, that's an interesting reaction. And I didn't think too much of it, but the next thing I know, I'm sitting on the curb, and the paramedics are working on me, and I see somebody laying in the street. And I ask the paramedics, "Is that guy okay?" I have no idea who it is. And their comment to me, "Well, he's not doing too good." Well, it turned out to be Officer Lewis, and I didn't find that out until the next day after I got out of surgery. So.
What are your thoughts about the fact that this case has gone unsolved for so many years?
Well, I know that police officers, unfortunately, are killed often. But it's particularly tragic when you don't know who did it. Most of the time, at least my perception, is that they know who did it. But in this case, it's been 40 years, and they, you heard what the detectives had to say. So hopefully there's something there that they can work on.
So as you heard, there's a $50,000 reward, if not a potential $75,000 reward for helping the Long Beach Police Department solve this crime. If you have any information, you're urged to call 562-570-7244, or you may remain anonymous by calling 1-800-222-TIPS. Get all your tips and information and help the Long Beach Police Department solve this outstanding crime.